Hello, I'm Kirk, editor-in-chief of Appletell,
And I'm Ed McCall, also with Appletell.
writer of Appletell, here broadcasting from the top of Appletell Towers in San Francisco. It's the first day after Macworld 2011, and we have some summaries to talk about here. The first thing we're going to discuss is this is the first year in recent memory that Macworld Expo was in the West Hall of Moscone Center instead of North, South, or a combination of North, South. Ed, thoughts about the move to West Hall?
Well, it's been in the West Hall once before, but it was only an overflow then, and it wasn't really a great spot because of that. But this time, with the entire show being there, I think it's actually worked out pretty well. Sometimes when we were in the North Hall, like last year, where they had to cut off parts of it just to make it fit right, it didn't feel very big. I think it feels a lot bigger this year because it kind of fills all of Moscone West.
Yeah, and last year there would be gaps. You would have a vendor and then two empty spots and then another vendor. So it feels more complete this year being in West. The comical thing though is that there is another convention going on in North South right now.
Yeah.
Which is some kind of fiber optic laser thing. So it feels like we've been pushed out of the big show and into the side show as a result of something that we don't even fully understand what it is.
Yeah, it definitely changes the flavor of the show a little bit because we aren't the big show in town like we have been in the past. But I think it gives it more of a community feel to it, and there's still a lot of excitement. The show floor is packed.
Yes.
And the vendors seem really excited about the response. So I think it's a good show. We found out that just the day before this show started, they announced the dates of Macworld 2012. So
Yep.
It appears that it will continue on, and I think everybody seems excited about it. So I think the odds of it going for a while are pretty good.
Yeah, and I think people are getting comfortable with the fact that Apple is not part of it anymore. Nobody's lamenting the loss of Apple. Obviously, when Apple was here and they would have announcements, we'd have the big banners that would wait to be unveiled after the keynote, and there was some excitement there. But because Apple's not here, the people who are showing up, there is more attention being placed on them, and a lot of people have expressed the fact they're happy that they're not getting buried under Apple or Adobe when they were here, or other larger companies.
Yeah.
And speaking of the companies, you have a couple iPad accessories that you were given, so let's take a look at some of the things people are
I do. It's an interesting year. Last year when we were here, the iPad had been announced, but nobody had ever really touched one.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, we'd find somebody who had actually gotten to handle it for 30 seconds, and everybody would ask them a million questions. Now, obviously, this year the iPad is out and is a huge success. In fact, we could almost call it iPad World from the amount of vendors that are out there showing things for the iPad. And a couple of big items are the mounting systems for the iPad. The one I'm using here is a system from a company called Modular, and it basically has a skin that goes on the back of the iPad, and it has four little nubs that then can attach to all sorts of accessories. I had a piece here that allows it to operate as a table stand, so I just attach that right on there. And I can do it this way, or I can flip it back around to use it in kind of a keyboard mode. I can flip it over to show somebody something. So, but then it also comes with a couple of straps and things that could be attached to use for your hand, a shoulder strap as well to throw it over the back. They come with a wall mounting plate, so you could actually mount it right on the wall. They also make refrigerator magnets that you can stick on here that are very strong, so you could actually put it on the outside of a refrigerator. And then it also comes with a cover that just snaps right over it for when you're carrying it around, so it does double as a hard shell protective case as well. I've been kind of following this one for a while when they first announced what they were doing, and I was kind of afraid that the little nubs on the back would kind of get in the way, but really they don't at all from the way you hold it. It maybe even gives you a little bit to grip along with the circle in the middle. So this seems like a nice product. We'll give it a full review. They've got some other things coming. They're working on a headrest stand to go with it as well, so you can attach it in your car and have it for kids to be able to watch their movies or whatever too. So That's a nice system for modular. There's also
Now, do we know the web address for modular?
I think it's just www.modulr.com.
Okay. All right, you can go ahead. I'll pull that up to verify.
Okay, and this is another piece from a company called Vogel's. Vogel's has been around for a long time, making all sorts of things, but this is kind of a new entry for them in the iPad area. This is also a mounting system that they call the Ringo, and this attaches onto the back of the iPad just like the modular system does. But instead of having the little nubs on the back, it just has a single ring that attaches into a piece that looks like this. This is their wall mount. You can see it's much smaller, and you can screw this onto a wall. They'll have an adhesive version if you just want to stick it to a wall. That'll have the strength to hold the iPad up. You would then just attach the iPad right onto that ring, so it's quite secure. The nice thing is that actually spins on the piece, so that way you could turn it any way you wanted to. And again, they're going to make several other pieces to go with it. They've got what they call a flex stand, which is just an arm that comes out. They've got a tabletop stand as well, and they have a couple more pieces they're working on, including a nice cover that goes over it that acts more like the Apple cover, so that you can flip it closed and easily flip it open, and then it folds underneath to make two different kinds of stands as well. So the Ringo from Vogel's, and I don't know the address on that one, but we'll look it up and get it to you. And we'll try and do a full review on that as well.
Modular is actually modulrcase.com.
Okay.
Modular case.
Okay. And then the final thing that I kind of found for the iPad when we were out there were gloves by Freehand. And they've been making gloves for a while now for the iPhone. The nice thing about Freehand's gloves, they've really kind of stepped it up. They're really nice. They've got a good grip inside, but then you can take the tip and just lay it back on these two and be able to use your iPad or your iPhone, either one. They have an iPad specific version where you can actually pull back all 5 of the tips if you want to.
You have tiny hands too.
This is actually my wife's going to do the review.
All right,
yeah.
fair enough.
So these aren't for me in the long run. My wife's going to do the review and give them a try. I actually have a pair of similar gloves from North Face that use a conductive tip, and Freehand has a conductive tip version as well. It's a very handy thing to have in the wintertime if you spend much time outside, because the phone, because it's a conductive surface, just doesn't work any other way. And instead of taking your gloves on and off all the time, it's nice to be able to have that option. So those are a few things we found for the iPad so far, and I'm going to reconnect this so I can keep using it. You can see just how easy that was.
Okay. Look up Ringo's address so we can get that set up. While he's doing that, I'm going to talk about my actual setup here for Macworld this year. Last year, it was MacBook. I did all the work on the MacBook. I traded that in for an iMac and picked up an iPad, and this is my first attempt at using an iPad to cover a show like this. The setup is pretty good, actually. I'm using a case from Moshimon, that's Moshi, MONDE.com, or MOSHIMONDE.com. It's got this really nice feel to it. We reviewed it at Appletell, so you can check that out. But the great thing about it is the setup. It's got 2 sets of nubs on the front, so you can position it here or here for writing, which when I'm using with the Apple Bluetooth keyboard works quite well. You can also set it up, I'm going to do this incorrectly. But anyway, we'll just move on. It covers up for good protection, but the cool thing also is when I'm on the show floor with it, it's got a pocket here specifically for holding it with your hand. So as opposed to squeezing it between your finger and thumb, it's easy to carry around. And when I'm using, say, the stylus from Hard Candy, which we've also reviewed on Appletell, it's very easy to write, take notes, or even still use your fingers as you're working on it like this. So it's a pretty good system. The iPad is not perfect for doing something like this because I do have to give all my graphics work to our cameraman, Josh, who will be on camera tomorrow. If we can find someone to give us a tripod for the phone. But so this is something Moshi is at the show, and they've got a lot of great products that we've reviewed recently, and you'll be able to see more of that as we cover them during the show this week.
The Ringo site is www.ipadonthewall.com. So that's iPadOnTheWall, all one word, .com.
Okay. And tomorrow we'll move on to some more likely iPhone accessories and maybe even some actual Mac products from Macworld. But let's talk about iWow right now.
Okay.
After the show, we went to a party where they announced their, what is the name of this thing?
The iWow, the SRS
Yeah, okay.
iWow.
Yeah, it's from a company called SRS. They do a lot of audio work, and this is one of their first. What they call it? Their baby product. Their baby. I can't remember what they said. Thing.
Yeah, it's basically an audio enhancement to simulate kind of surround sound and really bring out some of the frequencies that you wouldn't hear otherwise, and to do some simulation of more depth in your audio.
It's something you really have to hear to understand. You know, they gave us samples, of course, but it comes with a dock connector that you just plug into your device, and you would plug the headphones in here, and it comes with an app. And actually, it's warning me here; I have not installed it. But there's an app that gives you a little bit of control over the way it sounds. Not a lot, but you don't really need a lot because it's going to make the sound. They call it 3D sound, but it's actually just a much fuller sound.
Yeah. It's very effective for movies.
Yep.
Gives you a greater sense of that surround sound than you would get otherwise. I haven't tried the audio for the music. I think that's what Kirk got to try when we were there.
Yeah, and it was good. Both we were sampling some rock music, but I also switched it over to classical. And on classical, it really made a difference. It gave you a much fuller sound, like you were actually sitting there listening to the orchestra, as opposed to having it piped in. It's sort of like a tinny style sound. It's available on February 2nd. It's going to be released. There'll be two models. One, the basic kit, you just get what you need here. The app, by the way, is free when you buy this. And then there's also a kit which comes with 5 faceplates and
a pair of head earbuds to go with it.
And that one's going to be $99. I think this is $49.
That one's $49. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, that's something you'll want to look at. And again, we'll have a full review of that once you've actually been able to take it home and give it a sample.
Yeah, SRS is using the same algorithms in this that they use in a lot of big name manufacturers who do stereo systems that want to do fuller sound and do the simulated surround sound. So you'll see the SRS logo on a lot of big name products, and it's the same sort of thing that they've built into this piece to go with your iPhone, iPad, or as they said, pretty much any iOS device that uses the dock connector that's been made in the last few years.
Yeah, and something else to point out too is that the dock connector does have a little bit of a, I don't know what we'll call this here, but like an extension above it. So Ed was able to set it up in his phone with a case without removing the case. I just have a skin, so it doesn't make a difference there.
Yeah.
But even here, where I've got a little bit of a, you can still see that it comes in. Where I've got the silicon case does push things out a little bit, it still fits in pretty well. So overall, it's a pretty good system, and I'm looking forward to putting it through its paces with various styles of music and movies and games. But I think that'll do it today. We've gone on long enough.
Okay.
So we'll be back tomorrow night with more products from the show and more thoughts as we head into Friday.
See you tomorrow.